what this area is. We'll explain what it is, what we've heard to date, and how some zoning can reflect what we've heard to date. We aren't going to bore you by copying and pasting zoning bylaw language onto the screen, I promise. But we'll go over the goals and priorities to date and how we can continue to encourage future development in and around this area. We've also been working on some upgrades and changes from what we've heard from planning board and others to ask to consider. And so we're working with the planning board on these things, and that's another reason we wanted to host this meeting now. And today was because we want to talk about those changes, what they mean. Is it favorable or is it not? And so those are the things we want to hear back from you. This is an iterative process. Nothing is set in stone. We're still working towards our goals and considerations. We're still working on any final texts and allowances. There's a lot of time to go. There's going to be a lot more opportunity from here on out. But tonight we just wanted to have a discussion with you, and so that's why we're here today. Olivia, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So to my right is the project team, including our own local planning division, Kevin McCarthy here from Economic Development, Olivia Knightley in Housing and Sustainability, and our consultant Michael Wang from Foreman Place. It's been a great working relationship to date. And tonight, we just wanted to establish these goals, right? And here's what we'll go over tonight. We're going to provide some feedback, ask you to provide feedback on the proposed district boundaries and what these considerations are. We're going to look to determine those adequate neighborhood protections. What does that mean? What does that look like? Right? Those things in zoning like setbacks and height restrictions and lot coverage and things that kind of give you the parameters on what can and can't be built. Discuss that district identity and those zoning goals, and give you some context through local examples and some test fit scenarios. And then we'll just have a Q&A, an open discussion. I will ask you to hold questions to the end. There's a mic here, so everybody can hear you. This will be recorded and broadcasted on RCTV. And as always, we're open for conversations from here on out. So tonight, I'm going to pass it to Olivia Knightley to present some slides to you, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right. So as Andrew mentioned, we've been working with our planning board and a steering committee comprised of residents, select board member, planning board member, and FinCom member to help determine some allowances for the district. So initially, you can see here, we started with an area that is outlined by this blue hatched line here. So just to help orient you a little bit, we have Walker's Brook Drive to the north, Ash Street to the south, and then some landmarks we can use are Market Basket, RMLD, and the Reading DPW are down here. And to date, a lot of those conversations have been centered around the goals of the district. What do we want the identity to be for the district? And predominantly that has turned to, we'd like to see mixed use here. So that has been the bulk of the discussion. And tonight we're kind of trying to present a little bit more detail on the boundary and how that has evolved over time. And then some protections that are being considered for these residential areas, which is why we reached out to you guys as residential abutters specifically. We want your feedback and value anything that you can provide. So all in all, the district is around 100 acres with this expanded area over here. And this looks to include parcels along Ash Street and some additional larger parcels over here and goes right up to Reading's town line. So the current bylaw structure, as I mentioned, looks to outline the uses, what we're looking to allow and where, and some dimensional requirements that help spell out the minimum area allowed for some of these uses. So you can see for mixed use and multifamily, we're looking to allow those on larger 1 acre size parcels for the most part. 2-family or townhomes, scaling that down a little bit to 10,000 square feet, so a little bit smaller land area for those uses. And for fully commercial, 0 square feet. That's not to say that that's always the case throughout the district. We're looking to promote mixed use on larger commercial lots, but also create some gentle density along Ash Street. And we'll get into some protections and regulations around those uses and densities. Otherwise, the zoning also looks to address commercial requirements for mixed use. This is one of Reading's largest and predominant commercial areas, so we want to maintain commercial in this area to the best degree possible and see viable spaces that will succeed, and mixed use is a good way to do that. Looking to prescribe some maximum building footprints, so trying to not allow hulking buildings to take up this area and to bring in a little bit of variety in building space and typology. Other than that, looking to also prescribe maximum single retail size, so what size commercial feels right. We've kind of landed in the realm of 40 to 50,000 square feet for some larger commercial, but also looking to prescribe some smaller commercial spaces to be programmed in as well, and then potentially larger, for instance, with the market basket. Looking for also open space requirements, parking requirements, and density for housing allowances in the area. And so through the process, we've done a lot of public engagement, working with our steering committee and the planning board. With the help of Mike and with our planning team, we've reached out to all members of the public and held some open houses and design charrettes where we've landed on a lot of these goals to help shape the identity of the district. So as mentioned, mixed use, promoting some residential over commercial and transitioning well into those neighborhoods, but we also want the district to connect to the areas that you live in. Is walkability desirable? We want the district in and of itself to be walkable and not necessarily car centric, but how can we encourage connectivity to like the north and south areas in your neighborhood specifically? We also want to program an open space, have those minimum requirements where really none exists today. For housing and zoning, we do want a variety of housing types in the area, so you'll see things like townhomes as well as multifamily being allowed in the district. And then programming in that affordability as well. So it's a priority for the town and can help us maintain our SHI, which is a minimum requirement for affordable housing. And for economic growth, we see this as a major opportunity for the town, especially in this current state, for the town to pursue viable commercial revenue and opportunities to grow and support the community. And then otherwise, we're just continuing to think about architecture and design and how we can make the space feel like Reading and something that the community finds desirable, and working through like design guidelines and things like that. So thinking more about these residential corridors here. We have Bolton Street up top. We also have Ash Street on the bottom. Walker's Brook Drive to the north here again.
What did you say, Bolton Street? I said, so you put it.
Yep, so Bolton Street is right up here along this orange line. And so these sections here are what we're referring to as buffer zones. And so before, when I was mentioning uses allowed within the district, when we write the zoning, we can prescribe certain dimensional requirements for uses within these buffer zones to help protect and create that gentle density that I was referring to before. And so I also want to point out the green areas here, which is all wetlands. So we classify that as primarily undevelopable land. So when I said the district was around 100 acres before, when we exclude those wetlands and some of the buffer areas, we're looking at a little under 50 acres. Not to say that development can't occur within the buffer zones, but the bulk of the development we'd be looking at is within this central district area. Again, these widths are potentially subject to change. We're looking to mimic some of the existing structures that exist today. So you can see the rear lot lines for some of these parcels, as well as existing structures within the industrial district. So we're just trying to mirror that a little bit, and then along Walker's Brook Drive being considerate of uses that we think make sense along this commercial corridor without creating necessarily like a tunneling vision or really tall buildings that might obstruct the view for this district. Getting a little bit more into those buffer zones. We can do questions at the end, unless it's specific to the.
I was gonna ask about buffers.
Yep. And yeah, any specific questions we're happy to answer at the end. So classifying these as residential, commercial, and non-buffer zones. Those residential buffer zones were the areas in orange, the 250 feet from Ash Street and the 150 feet from Fulton Street. And within those areas, we're looking to allow a specific type of use. So you can see here, we've allowed at this point, 2-family townhomes, mixed use and multifamily with the asterisks that this would potentially only be allowed on acres of like 1 acre or more. So you need a larger lot to be able to create some of these more intensive uses, as well as potential for retail, restaurant, and office. Some of those uses do exist today along the corridor, a dentist and some other smaller businesses that exist. Uses that we would prohibit are like hotels, gyms, light industrial, really like car-oriented businesses. And possibly standalone commercial, within reason. For setbacks, we're looking to mirror a little like what exists today. And so for setbacks, that's how far your structure is from the lot line. So that creates a little bit of distance from lot to lot. If you are creating a new structure. And for maximum height, allowing up to 3 stories, with densities ranging somewhere between 15, possibly up to 25. Keeping in mind that a lot of the lot sizes are significantly under, let's say under half of an acre in that area. So moving on to commercial, this is that area within 250 feet of Walker's Brook Drive. We're looking to allow all commercial uses, some mixed use and residential. And when we say residential, that is multifamily standalone without retail first floor. Prohibited uses again are civic uses. I'm gonna correct myself, I think we are not allowing residential only within this buffer zone. That would be allowed within the greater district, but not necessarily right along Walker's Brook Drive. With the front setback prescribed for Walker's Brook, so pulling the building slightly off of that corridor. And then allowing a little bit taller of a building, 4 stories, possibly up to 5, through what we call a density bonus, which we'll get into a little bit more. And that's 30 DUA. The math can get a little confusing, but we're happy to detail that a little bit more. For the non-buffer zones, we're looking to allow all of the uses, again, prohibiting more auto-centric uses, with a little bit less restricted setbacks for this area. And then higher density and higher building height with potential for additional density bonuses. So as you move in on the district, further away from residential and like commercial corridor areas, you're seeing a little bit more intensive development as that skews a little bit as we move out of the district.
Can you remind us what DUA is again?
Dwelling units per acre.
Well, we'll be showing you some examples of what that looks like, visually.
And so just to summarize, because I know that was a lot, all in all, what this means for you as Ash and Fulton abutters is that we're trying to limit heights and require additional setbacks for buildings that would be directly abutting your area and within those buffer zones. We want separation for those taller buildings that would be right behind Ash Street, so anything directly behind your Ash Street parcels, we would have additional height requirements and density and height restrictions and distance prescribed for those. We're also looking to limit certain uses allowed to be more fitting to the neighborhood. So if we think about commercial uses directly along the corridor, things like neighborhood commercial, which we can define a little bit more in a minute. looking to also limit density for larger parcels along Ash Street. So while there are predominantly smaller, 10 to 20,000 square foot parcels on Ash Street, there's a handful of larger parcels that are like half an acre up to an acre or more. So being mindful of that, we would try to limit some of the density on those specific parcels and just create that general density. And like I said, there are some natural protections for this area, like the wetlands, buffer zones, and things like the Reading DPW, which we don't think have any plans at this time to be moving. So as that campus is an asset to the town, we see that as a way to continue to buffer the neighborhood as well. And so when we were talking about density bonuses before, for commercial and mixed use projects, these may request density bonuses if they provide certain public benefits like additional open space, additional affordable units, commercial space on site, certain connectivity improvements. So maybe like a trail or something that connects to the Bolton Street, or an improved access way from Ash Street for the neighborhood to get through the district. And then things like cultural programming. This could allow them to apply for a density bonus, which could allow up to 5 or 6 stories. This is not within the buffer zones. This would be within the district itself. So that would be set significantly back from your residential areas. And for context, I believe 55 Lockersbrook Drive over there is a 6-story building. So just for context, there is a 6-story building over there today, and we could also prescribe additional density allowances for developments that look to add some of these benefits. And these benefits are things that can be further discussed if we would like to see higher open space requirements and other community benefits. These are things that we can talk through as a community. And like I said, additional buffering from residential corridors is required if they are kind of nearing the rear of the lot line towards these buffer zones. If they receive a density bonus, they would have to push the building further from those buffer zone areas.
That's me. All right. Good. Okay. Thanks again for coming tonight. I'm Michael Wang with Former Place. I'm going to show you about just 8 or 9 slides that are really graphic based and with some photographs that will illustrate some of the typologies that Olivia was referring to. Because we really want to just move to having you guys engage us in an active conversation here. So actually I've got 2 questions, if you don't mind, just before I start. This is the room that we did our original kickoff open house in about a little over a year and a half ago in December. Were any of you guys at that event? You were, yeah. And then my other question is, we had that workshop where we built models of the site design. There was one person, there's a bunch of people that were there for that. Okay, good. I just curious how many people were following along and how closely, but in any case, I'm just gonna run through these slides quickly. This is a graphic that's showing, again, those buffer zones that Olivia was referring to. The orange buffer zones are the residential edges. And again, Ash Street is on the bottom here, and Bolton at the top, and Walkersbrook is the purple. And I think there's a number of things that we're still trying to figure out, which is where we would love to have your feedback. Whether mixed use, for example, is appropriate on Ash Street all the way down to, say, Cross or below, or whether people feel like that maybe that should be limited to RMLD area and up towards the intersection of the tracks. And so similarly, there's a lot of controls we can put on in terms of the size of ground floor commercial retail space. We can control the density of how much residential is allowed in a certain area, and I'm going to show you some illustrations of what that looks like. And again, as Olivia was referring to, we can also control other criteria like height and setbacks and open space and the size of building footprints.
Can you just tell where Main Street is?
Oh, yep, sorry. Main Street is actually right here, and it intersects with Ash Street right up to the same place where the tracks are, right?
Where they want to explain the blue lines.
Oh, here, this is the yes, okay. So this hatched yellow or orangish hatched area represents 250 feet setback from Ash Street. In this case, it represents 150 feet back from Bolton. There's a lot of built-in wetland area that you already have here as a buffer zone. And again, this buffer along Walker's Brook is 250 feet deep. One possible thing that we could do is, that might work if you have like 4-story development behind the neighborhoods here. But if this area you're allowed to, through some of the bonuses that Olivia was referring to, if you're allowed to go a little bit higher in some cases, we can either not allow it in the south section, or we could also possibly to say, if you're gonna go a story higher, you have to go an additional 50 or 100 feet back from the edge of the buffer. So there's all these options in play about criteria, and remembering also that like the DPW building is about 15-20 feet below the Ash Street elevation. So you've got that going for you too. That's almost 2 stories of height that's sort of below your Ash Street elevation. All right, let me just run through these again here. Let's see.
The black box.
Okay, sorry, black speaker. I appreciate that. That's fine. The black box here is what I was saying earlier, that perhaps an area like this could be considered to have slightly different criteria. Maybe that's an area, for example, where you guys feel we really don't want any mixed use in there at all. So like not even like a neighborhood general store kind of thing, or a place to like a service type use. So that's just an idea about you can in addition to sort of limiting, where the buffer zone is, we can control uses and stuff in certain sections of the buffer zone. And as Andrew mentioned, we could also make that a separate sub-district, so it has completely different criteria. So we still have a lot of opportunities in play here. But we're really trying to just get at the aesthetics and these are the critical areas whenever you have a big district like this, you really want to pay attention to those transition zones to the surrounding neighborhoods. So I'm going to show you one collection of images here that this is really designed for Walker's Brook Drive. You can see the scale of these buildings are much more for that type of a commercial corridor. And you can see examples here from everywhere from Colorado to Massachusetts of mixed use projects that are 3, 4, and in some cases 5 stories on the corner here. This is a new mixed use housing project in Newtonville. And I think, you're thinking about what that edge of Walker's Brook looks like. It's a real opportunity for gateway to the district, which can include open space integrated and signage and branding that really presents a nice sort of gateway to the district. That's one scale of thing that's happening potentially more on the commercial corridor, like a Walker's Brook. And then we have another scale that we're targeting in our language for the Ash and Bolton frontages. And it's more along this scale where you have either townhouses or these are apartments, 2 stories of apartments above a nice commercial base. But you see the architecture, it's very compatible and as you're transitioning to these single family neighborhoods. This is an example that I particularly like. It's actually a 4-unit home with 2 apartments on the lower level and 2 apartments above, but it actually feels like a single family home. So if you get a building of that size on a 1/4 acre lot, for example, that represents 4 units on a 1/4 acre represents 16 dwelling units per acre. Does that make sense, everyone? So yeah, okay. So then that just to give you a sense of what that feels like. Here's some other examples around the area of 2.5, 3-story buildings that are in areas where you're transitioning from a village or commercial center like Cushing Square in Belmont, if any of you know that. Or Newton Highlands is a new mixed-use building there. And these buildings are generally stepping down in volume and trying to get down to the scale of the surrounding neighborhoods. Okay, let me just conclude by showing you a few examples of some feasibility studies that we did, particularly thinking about the Ash Street. This is the original plan that we landed on that was after many, many different iterations and combining some studies we did on the north side with some studies we did on the south side. You can see here that, you know, central green space, kind of a new main or, you know, main street for the district here. And along the tracks, there were some larger mixed use, residential buildings. These types of buildings have maybe 100 units above, above commercial, on the street. And so a block like that might represent more like 50 dwelling units per acre. Whereas when you get to the south side, and we're looking at some of these smaller scale developments, which are either row houses here or like a 3-story residential building with some retail on the ground floor. This is looking more in the 15 to 20 dwelling units per acre range, just as a reference. But we're beginning to think about the importance of connectivity. Right now, the only way to access this whole area on the south side is to come across New Crossing from Walker's Brook. But there is the potential with some redevelopment, maybe some aggregation of parcels here, to make some nice connections down, maybe down to Ash Street, maybe all the way to Main Street. And that could be a way to really increase the walkability, get bike connections and everything to allow the neighborhoods down here to feed into this new amenity has open space and mixed use development.
I'm sorry, don't quite, where's running light? Is that gone now? Is that, I'm just having a hard time seeing.
It would be right here. This is the Station 1 building
Okay,
right here, and they're similar to a study that was done in 2019. We've been showing a little green space here in front of that. So that would be kind of a public open space amenity along Ash Street. And otherwise, we're trying to you know, create some street edge here to make it a nice.
To be clear, this is purely conceptual.
Oh,
If there
totally,
was
yeah.
a blank
I'm just trying to
slate.
visualize
Yeah.
this, because this wasn't
You know,
making sense to me, because
Yeah.
that's all like parking there now.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
a way to visually show what the zone is.
This whole thing is just a way to test what you could do in the district.
I
Yeah.
keep seeing what, I was like, is it gone or what?
Yeah, thank you. Well, so right now, we're still showing, this is that medical office building that exists, and here's the DPW building. Those pieces are there still, for example. Okay, almost wrapping up here. So I just wanted to show some examples of what could happen on Ash Street. Here's Avon coming in and Ash Street here. I've blown this up a little bit so you can see. But for example, if you were to combine a few parcels here, this is just past the RMLD, which is up at the top here. If you were to begin to combine some of these parcels, like say a developer came in and combined some parcels, the goal is to have the bylaw allow for a certain scale of development. And so you see here things like townhouses, which would make a nice street edge here. These smaller scale mixed use buildings with just a few either community spaces or retail spaces on the ground floor with residential above on 2 floors. This type of development essentially amounts to 18 dwelling units per acre, and it would allow for about 50 units in an area like that. And similarly down here, if you were to combine a few parcels here and you get about a little over an acre by combining maybe 3 or 4 parcels, you would be achieving still under 20 dwelling units per acre. I think I have one more example. This again is saying, you know, this could potentially create some nice connections down to Main Street here. And this one is being shown as going down along Avon Street, for example. But again, the idea of creating walkable connections. I don't need to elaborate on that. The last one here is another example of a larger collection of parcels being put together, just so you get a sense for it. Like, for example, if somebody were able to consolidate these parcels into about 4.5 acres, these are these 4-unit housing typologies that I was talking about, where you have the 2 above and 2 below. And then again, some of these other, there's 3 different housing typologies in here, but at a scale that I would argue is very similar to the single family residences that you find on Ash Street. So it's really thinking about the bylaw controlling the scale of these buildings to try to get down to the scale that's appropriate for the neighborhood. And again, that is representing 20 dwelling units per acre. I'm gonna stop there just to This is another idea about a through connection potentially, but, Andrew, you wanna pick up these guys up?
Yeah, I mean, I would keep that up for a second, so.
Okay.
Again, everything right now on those visuals is conceptual, right? Everybody owns individual lots right now. But the number one question we get is what happens if somebody does buy 2, 3 parcels, something like that? What we want to show is that these protections are in place across the entire district and that the density allowances are looking to establish neighborhood type feel along Ash Street and mixed use behind it. And so that destination type district. So everything's gonna take time, even the commercial parcels, right? All individually owned, all gonna take time if they do ever choose to redevelop and transition. And so whether that's 1 or 2 at a time, somebody is able on the north side to collaborate on across many different parcels. The zoning is in place in terms of land use allowances. Nobody has to do anything, including residential. So just want to stress that point because I know, right, conceptually drawing over all these different properties, what could it be? What does it look like? What do you mean I have to? Nope, nobody has to do anything. It's just what the zoning allows and we wanted to show the different scales of densities, right? Mike's examples were all 18, 20 dwelling units an acre. That's slightly above what we're even prescribing as 15 units an acre. So those protections are all in place to try to keep that neighborhood feel. We want to hear back, right, on just about everything, specifically those buffer zones, what's included in them, where does that edge sit? And then also behind them, right, is it too much? Is 100 feet not enough? Is that South District in general, like what do you think around there on Ash Street, on the north side, on Bolton? What makes sense over there? Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to skip ahead. So I just want to open it up to questions and comments, make sure we can tackle a variety of things before it gets too late.
So are you guys aware of the current development that's on Ash Street right now?
Like-
It's like in 2.
2 or 3
Yeah.
unit, yeah.
So that, if you guys are familiar with that, is that kind of similar to what your view is if, you know, from that kind of aesthetic standpoint,
Yes.
from the size?
Yep, yes, exactly. So that height, I can't remember off the top of my head. I do believe that has some pitched roofs, but that's like 2.5 stories, I
Yeah.
believe. So that's exactly the feel. The density allowances right now at 15 units an acre would look to allow 2, possibly 3 units by right on most every lot along Ash Street.
And re-emphasizing that it needs to work, whatever we write needs to work for if the parcels are staying the way they are, or if you get a combination of them put together.
No. So just to kind of go back, because you had mentioned that there was that black box area. And I noticed that with the some of the space that you guys have already kind of reimagined right there, that falls within that black box area.
Right.
So I'm assuming that you guys are just trying to give some ideas in terms of what could potentially happen. But
Yes.
you are all still thinking that the areas within that black box, I guess we would have some input into whether or not I guess how would it go, how would the town or us as abutters go about, you know, having any sort of say with what goes in that area right there?
Yeah, so like I wanna hear about the uses that you might like there, like is small scale neighborhood commercial something, right? Say a max 750 square foot commercial space in a mixed use only building. Not appropriate, right? Coffee shop, yeah,
Keep it residential.
keep it residential,
People break the zoning because they're building around us. I have a question. I live in the black box, so if they're gonna be building around me, I would like to have some sort of benefit from that as well. So I do like the rezoning of our area. And behind us is strictly residential. On the other side of the train tracks, on the northwest side, that's more of a commercial. On the south section, that's where we live, that's residential. On the on the other side of the train tracks are running, we don't have any playgrounds, we don't have any green space. So I really want the town to consider anything on the other side of the train tracks where Ash Street is, incorporate residential, get commercial out of there. You can do 4-story max, 40 feet. You have to extend the buffer maybe at least another 100 feet beyond the black box, if not more. And then on the other side of the train, then we also need green space in there. Dog parks, whatever, because we have nothing on the other side of our train track. And then on the opposite side of the train track where all the commercial is, then, you guys can go. You guys can go, what's that place in Assembly Road type of style, whatever you guys are thinking. So,
you
but
think no commercial, is everybody like no mixed use or commercial allowances even back here?
Can we clarify the definition of commercial for everybody?
Right.
Because it was depicted like a store where a bunch of people are coming by versus an opportunity for office space for somebody to have boutique clothing, their own law practice, they're, doing acupuncture, whatever it might be. So there's business potential for people to see, oh, I have an opportunity to up the value of my property by bringing in my own opportunity to have business, live, work situation as commercial.
Yeah, so I mean, that's part of what we meant by in the orange, like neighborhood commercial, like completely limit it to small scale specific type uses, whether that's. You even actually have an example at the end of Ashland. Can you just skip ahead to that example? Yeah.
It's a perfect example.
So understanding that this property is separated by commercial buildings. Getting there, I promise. It's the dentist building, down at the pointer, but. Something that looks residential but has a commercial opportunity for the homeowner to be able to say, I do have an exhibit, I do have a small sandwich shop, right? If anybody remembers Chuck's Deli, back in the day on Washington Street. So I think you went one too far.
So while they're looking for that, interestingly, the way it exists today, the zoning, both that first stretch of Ash Street and the first stretch of Bolton where the Walgreens is that is also zoned business right now.
It is.
So
There is a whole section of Ash that is zoned industrial currently,
There
there are
is.
industries in there.
Yeah.
There's something like grinding company.
Correct.
But as that is, those are there and then you get past them and then it is just
And
strictly
it's full
residential.
residential.
And that's that black box showing
Right,
right there.
So I had some concerns in the charts. First of all, there's a critical drainage canal that runs from the wetlands through that area that I don't see anywhere indicated on your charts. And I believe the Commonwealth of Massachusetts requires that all those wetland canals be indicated on the planning charts. I don't see them there.
So we do have the wetland map, but it must have frozen.
It's not the wetlands themselves, there's a drainage canal.
Yep.
That if it's not maintained or if it's obstructed, can cause massive property damage. So that was one concern I had. I don't see it on any charts, and I do believe it's legally required. The second thing is I wanted to ask, you talk about consolidating plots. Do you mean using the town of Reading's power to do takings of?
Absolutely not. No, the town is.
Neighbor to merge the property.
That's what is often said, but is the real rule gonna be written in to the zoning? You're gonna talk about equaling those individual lot sizes, or you're gonna consolidate and change the lot sizes?
we're not changing any lot sizes.
Right.
What happens when you add an overlay like this is if you're one of the landowners of one of those parcels along there, you basically are getting more rights on your property of things that you can do with it, and it actually probably increases the value of your property. And so it's up to somebody to say, I wanna buy those 3 parcels, and they make an offer you can't refuse, and then something happens.
Thank you. I apologize, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Philip Corcoran, 320 Ash Street. This is not my first dance. So I know that what you have said is maybe misleading.
So, right, the town's not interested in terms of building mixed use or new residential down here. The 10,000 square foot limit for 2-family and or townhomes is prescribed so that all the existing residential lots on Ash can use that as they exist. No lot is smaller than 10,000 in that buffer zone. So there's no need to encourage or require any type of consolidation. Someone, right, I think it's 2, 2, 3, 2, and then a row of single family homes for the most part, but the single family homes now have an allowance for 2-family just as their neighbors further up the street are. The zoning is written to say that all those lots can qualify for that 2-family status, maybe a few additional units in place, not to prescribe consolidation.
Right, but you brought up the mention of consolidating lots.
Consolidating lots does happen. It happened on Main Street. We saw the Main and Pineville example, right? That was 3 commercial lots transformed into 1 mixed use building. That's Main Street. It's different, but it could be akin to commercial parcels on the other side of the
What my point
tracks.
was just that we're trying to make sure we protect the situation if the consolidation does happen.
Right. If someone does hit an acre somehow,
And
again,
so
none of
the
these.
question I asked is, are you going to include specific language in the zoning law that is going to forbid the use of takings? Since I know that you work for a commercial planning organization, and so you can't in all truth say to me, well, you announced it. You can't say to me that developers don't come in and offer tax and other incentives to communities in order to use their power of taking. If, say, somebody wants to have a larger area to put a property on, and the neighbor doesn't want to sell, takings do happen.
He's talking eminent domain.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
just legally it's called taking.
I've never
It does
seen
not
that in
happen.
the zoning, right?
It certainly hasn't happened by a developer.
Right.
Developers don't do eminent domain.
I've never seen that in the zoning. It's right, a different legal process taking, so, and town meeting process, all those types of things that involve substantial community involvement and long-term planning for it doesn't,
Wouldn't be asking it if I hadn't been through it.
I
I know the
understand
process.
this, so. I'm gonna go to the next to you on Bolton.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I'm on Bolton Street.
Mhm.
I'm not concerned about any building or whatever there. It seems like we're pretty set.
Mhm.
But what I am concerned about is the intersection. I've heard it described as the most dangerous intersection in the state.
Washington and Maine.
And I
and
don't
Ash.
see anything in your plans, like even a traffic signal or something. I don't see anything in your plans that's gonna protect the neighborhood at that intersection.
At Washington.
With McDonald's, Ash.
Ash and Bolton.
You cross-
Yeah, not Washington, it's a 3-way intersection over
Right.
train tracks, 5-way intersection over train tracks.
Yeah.
So
It's insane.
conceptually, the town has looked at this in 2021, I wanna say maybe it was 2019 or so with Green International. We did conceptually look at that intersection and what would be required, and that's where you see this red arrow on Ash in between going out to Maine. That the town could consider 90ing that off between 2 commercial private properties. That requires easements for plannings and partnerships and or takings. That's a hard fix without partnership. And so, but that is a long-term plan that, right, again, those 2 parcels are in the Main Street district, which allows mixed use, which allows redevelopment, that if they come in, the town could conceptually say, we'd like to partner with you if you're going to redevelop the Valvoline and Burger King to help us connect Ash to Maine, and now we have a fix there. Otherwise, it is a substantial, expensive design and build process to fix that.
Without
road.
that though, can you put a traffic signal?
I do not believe it qualifies. I can look into that. I don't know if we've done a signal analysis there or not. And it would be quite a signal, and that also can impact your quiet zone designation if there's enough backup onto and over the tracks. Now they'd be honking the train horn every time you'd be coming over. So things to consider, but long-term wise, that intersection is a need. There's thoughts around it. We'd love to pursue it sometime in the future, near future. It just is a process for that one.
on that note, 'cause that's where I was going with this, is that we have that awful intersection. It took me, I live down the street, it took me over 5 minutes because I was at the lights at Washington Street. So we're talking about, we talked about accessibility, but we're just saying if there's foot accessibility, is there also gonna be added traffic accessibility? And I just don't see how we add that kind of density, whether it's residential, commercial, to just add to that already existing problem. That problem, I always say this, I go back to when you could not drive from the Walgreens over towards the Market Basket. That was a gated off thing. And now not only is it open, but we intentionally push traffic. You can't take a left out of Market Basket onto Walkersburg.
Fixing that,
We
working.
push, right, I know, but now we're pushing that. Not, that being said, we add that much more. How does this little area handle that if we're not gonna fix that? We shouldn't even have that conversation if that's not fixed. Because even if you can divert traffic, people going onto Main Street, waiting at that long light at Washington with train tracks coming. And then I think it was mentioned on one of the other things, possibly with Avon Street. I go on Avon Street every day. There's no sidewalks. You can barely get by. If there's a car parked, it's basically a one-way street. To me, those are the things, before we start talking about development, particularly on this side of the tracks. I don't think you can go any further without addressing how does that traffic area get fixed first?
So that traffic is long-term. These type of developments are long-term. It's where the town does have to put itself in a situation that we are ready for those type of things, that if there is any public-private partnership, right? If we know we want sidewalks on this side of Ash Street, if we know Avon needs improvements, like, we do have to be ready that if development were to come in to have those conversations, we can look at it ourselves too with complete streets and other type of opportunities across town. Is prioritizing this area, Birch Meadow, Killam School, sidewalks, things like that, that like always come into consideration. And again, these things take time, but knowing this development can take a long, long time to come through, just given the individual landowners, just given individual leases, that we just have to keep preparing and planning. But I don't disregard that point that that intersection needs to be critically looked at.
And another thing, it's potentially encouraging the connectivity to Walker's Brook, no new crossing. So not all that development on the south side necessarily is going out to Ash. It's, you're trying to connect it up to.
Not all of it, but
Yeah.
plenty of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a road diet now. I can see increased traffic, people avoiding Main Street that are cutting down. It's Ash Street further down, there's a bridge that says no commercial trucks. You're not supposed to have commercial truck. What's stopping the trucks that, well, there will be trucks. If there's commercials, there's gonna be more trucks going by. But stopping them from traveling over that bridge where there's not supposed to be commercial traffic.
Well, maybe ultimately it'd be more attractive for them to go out the other way.
It might be attractive, but that might not
So let's give me
happen.
a question. There have been numerous studies of the traffic on Walker's Drive, which is currently under revision. You're talking about adding a lot more commercial use land in there. I know you're phrasing it as multi-use, that means if you have residents, you also get a lot more garbage and stuff coming out and big trucks, and if you have commercial. Is Walker's Brook Drive going to be able to take that traffic?
Yes.
Because that's where most of the infrastructure support, transport is gonna have to go, and Walker's Brook is already overburdened.
So there is a traffic design analysis on the Walker's Brook page that did include these projections for both increased commercial space and increased residential. At peak hours, levels of service always go down on signals, right? But that's peak hours. Otherwise, that roadway does operate efficiently under the proposed conditions as well. And so that level of service is not significantly impacted.
On the proposed provisions, I know that exiting out of stopping Market Basket, there's only one direction you can go.
Right.
It doesn't split in two ways. So, and then that really jams up Ash Street and that five-way intersection. I don't know who decided just to make it one way, which is insane, but that's the reason why that intersection's so jammed up. There's only one exit, one way
Right.
out
There
of
are
Market
people
Basket, which is
crossing
crazy.
out. They'd rather go back through Market Basket to Ash to get to their residence rather than try to pull that left illegally.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know how I feel about this?
Yep.
You know how I feel
I
about
do.
this? So the reason why you can't turn left of Market Basket is, I know you guys fly around that Washington Street corner and you go on your day going to Market Basket. There is a residential area that you are flying through. We live, these three people here, live in that area. The reason why you can't turn left is because it's protective of that neighborhood. We raise kids, we have grandchildren, we have families that live right there.
We live on Ash Street too. There's
Yeah,
other
we live on Ash
neighborhoods,
Street
like,
as well.
I'm not
There's
defending,
kids
but if we set a precedence is protecting certain neighborhoods,
People get hit by trains.
how are we protecting the other neighborhoods?
So way back when Market Basket wanted to go into that spot, and they talked about putting a movie theater in it if you didn't let Market Basket be there. And the residents had, like she said, the traffic is already too bad already. But the agreement was that that traffic would not be able to take a left, trying to stop it from trying to cut through all those neighborhoods. And that was the agreement with Market Basket when they built it. That was the agreement that was reached with the town and everything. And that's why they were allowed to put that much traffic in there. And as we all know, Market Basket has way too much traffic. It's incredible. And even though you're not allowed to take a left, you know how many people continue to take a left and almost have accidents? It's horrible.
So,
Well, in the interim though, what occurs is we can't take that left. It's jammed up the intersection where the train tracks are, that five-way intersection. Since you can't take a left, everyone jams down that intersection. It's a five-way intersection, multiple stop signs, drive-through McDonald's, trains going through, lights, stop signs. It's insanity. And what's happening in our neighborhood is insanity. I can't even drive down it.
So I'm
It's-
sorry,
It's insane.
would you go back to the map? You show a potential connection from New Crossing Road. And evidently you would build some sort of ramp up there to Ash and then that little jog there to Ash and then through the what is currently the oil changing place and everything, right? So this proposal is essentially eliminating the path that currently goes through that five-way intersection, right?
right, well, if I understand what you're saying, the intent is that rather than taking up to the corner of Ash and Bolton, there's possible connections for the Ash Street neighborhood to get down through New Crossing and Pond Meadow.
Well, the other way up is where a lot of the traffic that they are speaking of would go, not down to, but up front.
Right,
They
In
can take a left
specific,
out of
they're
there,
gonna
too.
come off the highway onto Wheeler Drive and then a New Crossing Road and then up through here.
Right, but likewise, that flow of traffic, it's showing there and it's going in between the two buildings now that we talked about the Burger King and the other one. But likewise, they could take a left and just start cutting through Ash Street too. Presumably, because it's gonna be clogged down there. So now we have basically, let's show the other way. So basically you're making Ash Street a bigger thoroughfare with all that draw there. You wanna
All
push people
because
to
you
Ash
can't take
Street.
a left. Yeah.
They can go left on Ash Street. Now all of a sudden it's a main thoroughfare cut through for in and out.
when you say left, you mean like from somewhere that's.
Yeah, right there, right where you show it and it's a hard right angle.
Yeah.
It could equally be a left angle and all these cars are now pushing down Ash Street into the residential areas. We're talking about precedents of trying to protect residential areas. So what's protecting all these neighborhoods from there on, from it just being a free flow of all the traffic, the volume of traffic?
So it is another talking point in terms of how we prescribe connections and their treatments, right? Do you prescribe a very narrow road, pedestrian oriented road? Speed bumps, speed humps, those type of things that say, this is not a cut through road, this is simply an access point, right? Maybe it's good sidewalks, maybe it's better treatment, but right, this is again conceptual, right, where things could lay out, they might never lay out this way, they probably won't lay out this way.
This is the crux of all the development we've seen around here where people have built, say, big condos, big mixed use stuff. is that you have a huge increase in traffic, but the roadways really can't be widened. So if you put on speed bumps or something, you're suggesting you can slow traffic, that just means that all the traffic gets congested
What I'm
more.
saying is you don't want people to treat this as a cut through, high speed
No,
oriented.
what I'm
road.
saying is that I want to see more more demonstration and analysis of how the traffic, the vehicles particularly, are gonna get in and out of this great increase of commercial and residential area that you're proposing.
Well, it's not a proposal, so, and so just, let's pause for a sec, because it's tempting when you see that, but it's not, this is one possible out of myriad possibilities. I get that any proposal, if this area gets redeveloped over time and in phases, would probably want a connection, so that part remains true. It will want and need a connection, and
Not
any
just
development would benefit from it. The question is, are there negatives for it as well?
Well,
And I
like,
think there obviously might be.
I'll bring up the market basket
but
thing,
you're-
when they open that up. This intersection has been a mess for now over 15 years and nothing's happening with it. So how do we know another mess doesn't happen that never gets fixed?
People get hit by trains.
Does that happen?
You guys have a lot of truck traffic on the Ash Street side right now, as it is,
Yeah.
between Barbas and RMLD.
I mean, I get people who ignore the stop sign, they're like, it's just.
John,
Like,
quick.
you add that much density and more cars going there.
So only to add to, any redevelopment does require traffic analysis scenarios, traffic counts, turning counts, projections, level of service. Is a signal required, is it not? Those are the types of things that are required at a development application. Right now, we're just talking zoning, right? And what is
You have
that?
asked for our feedback and I think
I know.
everyone has raised the traffic issue.
Traffic is,
That's obviously been an even stronger feedback than whether something is commercial, residential, mixed use. From this short meeting, I would say the big message in answer to your question of feedback is everyone's concerned about the traffic flow issues that this may cause.
I think to go back to our original question, sorry, John, you had a question as well. Like you've gotten to the crux of the issue, absolutely, with the main Ash and Bolton intersection. As residents of this area, are there improvements that you wanna see for connectivity to access the district? So you don't have to consistently only use that singular intersection and be
Not-
forced to go that way? Do you see a benefit with connectivity to the south side, or is that only perceived as a negative?
Such as cross street going across the DPW to get into the site.
Correct.
So new crossing road, right?
Yeah,
Cross street.
Because if you're
Correct.
living adjacent to a development, would you like to be able to access it? Or are you okay having to take the difficult route to access these amenities? Right.
Correct.
I assume it's not an enjoyable ride to get to Marcus Basket from Ash Street.
It's not at all right now.
No, it
You
is,
don't have to go into, you don't have to go into that intersection.
it is not bad. What it is terribly frightening for is my wife, who's a pedestrian. She has to make that crossing just every day.
Yeah, that's.
That, you know, that concerns me more. The traffic going through there is quite unpleasant, but if you take it slow and you watch the train crossing, it doesn't seem a hazard. But there doesn't currently seem to be any
So slow
safety
speeds,
put in
traffic
for
calming,
pedestrians.
Right, slower speeds, traffic calming. I'm gonna jump to John and then my friend up here.
Andrew, what I'm hearing is that while we're talking about conceptual, whereas traffic pattern analysis typically follows a proposal, it may want to be an input into this process. So that anything, it's almost a truth in advertising thing. Anything we show as a concept has a matching assessment of, given the current status quo and known pinch points, here's what the contribution, the additive contribution is, as an input to the decision, not as a consequence to the development. And that's novel. I don't think we've ever done that, but you have an over-constrained problem here between density, use cases, current access, and a bunch of other things going on in town that just make it hard. I almost wonder if we ought to look at a gross level, traffic analysis complementary to any proposal we display.
Yeah, it is a tough one, right? It's hard to project on a connection that doesn't exist or an intensity that doesn't exist.
But you drew it. You drew it.
Right.
So let's
I've done it for a living,
Right.
it's not that hard.
So, I mean, it's something we can look at, it's something we can consider. Like I said, we've studied it on Walkersbrook and those signals, but no, we haven't Ash, so it's something to consider to see if we can find answers for.
That intersection, Walkersbrook Village and Lakeview, right at the market basket.
Yep.
And it's another nightmare for traffic because they're they're flying down Washington.
Traffic light for Salem,
And,
for the bank, but there's no traffic light.
Right, right.
yeah, but the
Right.
bank got a light.
Yep.
Interesting.
It did, because that was at the actual immediate crossing, there is, under the Walkersbrook signal consideration and re-signaling that is incorporating Lakeview into that signal and having an extension of that arm to say Lakeview, General Way, the bank are all active under one signal to improve the movements there, so, great point.
That's if you, on this development, if you could include that.
Because there's been more development in that area.
Right,
Yeah,
right, so that came out of the in Lakeview 40B, this whole Walkersbrook
Right.
study at that intersection and now going down. So Matt, I saw your hand up in the back.
Yeah. You know, I look at this and, you know, there's gonna be connections made, we've gotta find. But looking at, you know, I live off Beach Street on the other side, Lakeview, where it's impossible to get to, I either have to go through the Salem 5 or take the little illegal left out of Market Basket. Looking at this here, you know, we could fix this now. Like fixing that connection from Market Basket to New Crossing and let everybody know about it. They come out New Crossing and take a left instead of having to go out the other end, out to Bolton, out to Main Street. You know, we won't even have to wait for zoning for that. We could, it's something that can be fixed, I think fairly easily. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why that section is closed off, like why you can't go out that way.
So it's probably hard to see here, but the Market Basket, sorry, can you pull that back up to full screen? This is the Market Basket General Way parcel. It points to right here. This is the lot line and there's an odd parcel owned by another owner and then the Stop and Shop. So the Market Basket actually does not have any access path because of two different ownerships directly abutting it. So beyond private partnerships and easements together, which they were not able to facilitate at the time of development, they actually cannot get a
Okay.
connection.
Yeah, I think the answer, you know, is that the reason that the left is currently prohibited at Market Basket is to reduce traffic through the residential neighborhood to the left. If you go down and take a left on New Crossing,
Right.
you'd still be sending the traffic to the
Yes,
residential.
you would be.
But this is the issue, this is the issue, is
I
that
live there.
that left reduces the traffic coming up Washington, which of course is a big road and is currently sending it through this five-way intersection. You know, that is an issue of.
No, and I get that issue. I think you'll have, the concern I thought I heard was when the Market Basket put it in, is they were coming out and they're flying fast. There's a light there now. So if they come out at New Crossing, they're not gonna be flying through it. Obviously, they might be still, people still do. But I mean, people have to go left somehow, so I don't know.
You can go around the rotary.
People, I see, you know, people, the cars are still gonna go that way. They're gonna come out, they're gonna go through the Salem 5 parking lot. They're gonna go out, they're gonna go through Stop and Shop parking lot and go out left.
Right.
They're all doing it anyway. And then the cars that are coming to go to Home Depot and all the other stores that are there now still go back that way. So I don't know if it's as much of a thing, as much of a reason as it was when Market Basket went in, when there was nothing else there. Because there was nothing, like when Market Basket went in, there was, I don't think anything was really
There's
open.
no
there at
light
the
in
time.
General Way.
There was no Salem 5, there was no Home Depot.
I just wanna throw in another can of worms. I saw something about a bike lane on
So-
Walker Brook
Yeah, Walker
Drive,
Not a
yeah.
bike
that
lane,
cannot help.
So again, we've studied, that's still in design phase and consideration, it's incorporated these type of things, but what that's looking for is this separate project, but correlated, and part of this too, is dedicated left-hand turns. It's not a Main Street road diet, it's not a shared turn, it's dedicated left-hand turns at each signal. So someone has a dedicated arrow to take a left into Market Basket, someone on the other side has a dedicated left arrow to take a left into the new Trader Joe's going in. So there's dedicated lefts, and what that does do is open up some additional space to do a 10-foot sidewalk on this side of the road. So you still have full through lanes, dedicated left-hand turn, and room for a 10-foot, what they do call is a shared use path. It is a glorified sidewalk. It's a concrete sidewalk. It's 10 feet wide. There's a buffer strip. And they call it a shared use path because there is room for pedestrians and or bikes, but it is really a big sidewalk at the end of the day. But that project is about that shared use path and the dedicated lefts to improve movements up and down Walker's Brook at each and every signal. And that, again, design report is on the website. The concept is on the website, still going through design process, still a lot of room for public input on that one.
So we're talking about that, like I'm thinking of, okay, the conceptual was to echo it there. On a street that is just a single 2-lane with only one sidewalk on one side, the other one does not have sidewalk, the side that actually is on the side of the
Talking
development,
about Ash Street.
on the Ash Street.
Yep.
So how does walkability happen? You mentioned it before with cooperation with neighbors, is that taking of land? to create
Yeah,
sidewalks?
so there is room right in developments and development opportunities to add sidewalks, right? We see it up and down Main Street, we see it in the, I think on the Lakeview project, up and down Lakeview as itself they finished that sidewalk. That was a whole new sidewalk that was supposed to go, I think there was an existing sidewalk, but it was an improved sidewalk. But same thing, right? Just with every neighborhood in town, right, in terms of considering complete streets and sidewalk prioritization, Ash Street can find itself into that conversation, especially if we're looking at a priority development area. And so that helps in terms of grant allowances, grant programs looking to say new housing could be coming in. Sidewalk is a great grant between MassWorks, between Catalyst grants, between Complete Streets. It opens up a lot of opportunities. So again, long-term building, it does take time for those things, but it is possible to consider Ash as part of those Complete Street grants applications. Saw your hand up.
Hi, Sarah Jones at 180 North Street. There are 2 new developments on South Main coming up.
Yep.
Next to Perfectos and across from it that are mixed residential.
Yeah, one has not been approved yet.
Avon is a major cut through. I debate this with people who disagree. Every business on Ash that's behind RMLD, including RMLD, cut through our street every day, many times a day, to avoid going to the end where the Galilee and the McDonald's is. We also had an opportunity to live on Cross Street for a year. That's a cut through as well. I think Avon is worse. So I see increased traffic flow with those residential buildings coming on South Main. And if you put more residential in this conceptual design, people are gonna get faster, right? Cut up our street.
2 narrow streets with no sidewalks, so we're talking about equipment accessibility, and yet it's been mentioned, it's dangerous now walking there. And then these little side streets, like how far are we gonna prioritize out to make sure that the people who actually have to live within here are actually have the best benefit of walkability and not just people walking because it's a good commercial
I
attraction.
think the route that's shown there is maybe the only best route. Right, that one bypasses Avon. And the only alternative really would be to take the right and then go up across or,
But it
what's
doesn't
that,
stop
the summer.
anybody from using Avon or Cross Street. for
No,
that
it
matter.
doesn't stop them, but it gives them the opportunity to go through the parking lot there. You
It should
know,
be wider, I would imagine, right?
but you gotta fix the huge pothole in it, but of course, whether you can actually get onto Main Street from there is another question. I mean, you can turn right from
Might need
there,
a light there.
turning left, well.
That's right
You
across
might, you
the
might need a light with.
If you put a light there,
Right.
then it gives us a much better pedestrian access to the train station as well. Cause right now, you have to cross all the way down to Washington in order to get, like, you have to go through.
I am happy to keep talking traffic.
Traffic's a big issue when
There
you're
is,
talking about.
and there's a lot of design considerations, right, as things progress, if anything were to happen, right? All of a sudden, people throw out ideas during development, is that an entry only off of Ash, so nobody can exit there and it's only entry? Are they narrow one-ways, are there circulation routes that aren't even considered here that are probably better and more appropriate, so. There's a lot of considerations on traffic, if you ask me, every street deserves a sidewalk and a street tree. They are expensive. We do plan for long-term traffic improvements, especially in priority development areas. That's why the Walker's Brook was prioritized for grant applications. And movement and improvements through that signal plan and that shared use path. That is why Ash, Bolton and Maine keeps coming up to say we have to look at this. That is on our radar to say, how can we pursue grants? Again, that is a typical one without like private commercial partnership because there is private land impacts that would have to be considered there. And so there are a whole slew of options, right, to go forward on traffic and consider long term. I'm happy to talk about them conceptually all night, but I do want to make sure other aspects of the zoning too make sense if it does move forward and what does fit in this area. And what might help even traffic reduction, right? Like you said, if you don't want commercial back there, if it's only the small scale residential on Ash, like what else limits in terms of intensity in the area?
So you wouldn't be able to do an RMLD, for example.
Yeah, you mentioned that initials twice, what's it stand for?
Reading the municipal department.
It's the.
Mike, what's it, what about RMLD?
What about RMLD?
Oh, it wouldn't be something you could do under the new zoning in that buffer zone, for example. So,
Right,
So that activity would be prohibited. If you zone that, it wouldn't be that having the light plant there wouldn't be allowed. That's.
So for example,
That's another way to say industrial would be prohibited, big
You know, the
large
ins and outs
trucks.
that the employees are doing, all that stuff wouldn't be there anymore,
Right, and there is aspects, right, to continue to consider townwide, like commercial based, commercial vitality, commercial tax base, like. There are a lot of considerations, the neighborhoods are very important ones, but we wanna make sure we're capturing a great district for the town and the neighborhood, and so that's important.
So, feedback.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go against the dais and I'm gonna say that I think conceptually what you all have put together, what you're thinking is great. I think this town, time and time again, there have been so many complaints about we're reliant too much on residential taxes, bringing revenue to the town, not opening enough business opportunity. This is helping solve that problem. So anybody that complains about the taxes going up, this is the solution or a type of solution to it. Now, I mean, I certainly share, everybody's, concerns about traffic and all of that. I know you guys are obviously, that's kind of part of the next phase. You've heard plenty from everybody, that, that's definitely a high priority. And that intersection, obviously, that I'm not gonna talk about anymore is, persona non grata, like that needs to get solved. But, I think the bigger question that I have, because you talked a little bit about kind of the buffer zoning, the special permits. So I think from my perspective, the black box, that has got to have strong restrictions in terms of special permits. And not only for if multiple people decide to get together, sell their parcels, what have you. But I would also say that there should be within that black box and
even stricter buffer zone. To kind of protect the residents on Ash that are abutting these special properties. I am curious because for the south section, you guys have mentioned DPW is pretty much not part of all of this. And then, but the medical building, you guys have kind of left there as well. Is there a reason why? I mean, is that staying, like they're not interested in being part of this at all? Or is that potentially another building that could fall into this whole south section development?
It is a building that could fall into it. I think what we wanted to show in that section was right, what exists there is 2 to 3 story office, and so there was no need to change that because it exists today. But office and that type of commercial is a use to potentially promote over here, if appropriate, to say like more commercial. Maybe it's less intensive commercial if it's office and daytime type uses rather than your typical retail, but is that something we can promote and try to maintain? And what is an existing industrial and commercial area?
And then I guess the last comment that I have, I really am not a specialist, I'm not even like trying to play like I know what I'm talking about, but I am curious about, public private partnerships. So this rezoning provides opportunity for current owners of these parcels to reimagine what their options are and what they could do. I mean, you guys could do all this and nobody wants to do anything and then nothing ever happens. Obviously, the hope here is that something would happen on a grand scale and really provide opportunity for this to potentially become a reality. I guess my bigger question is, in terms of public spaces, how do you work in determining from a development standpoint, what is a public space, quote unquote, in terms of they can build a courtyard, but they can make it private to the residents and not something that's open to the general public. So I guess that's a big question that I have in terms of how would that.
Absolutely. Right, so there's examples of like private open space in downtown, right? If you're familiar with the Postmark building on the Sanborn Street side, they did a small little courtyard. It's great from the neighborhood's perspective, steps the building back, has this nice greenery. In this district, yes, there will be open space requirements. What we're looking to prescribe is that on large lots that would require 10% open space, which can trigger up to half an acre or an acre's worth of green space, if not more on some.
That has to be.
At a certain, once you trigger a large enough open space requirement, a certain percentage of that needs to be of size and publicly accessible. And so that is written into the zoning, public at grade, available for the businesses, residents, and general public in some sort of fashion. So I don't know quite what that looks like. You saw the acre on the concept there, that kind of town square, but that's what we're getting at, that that's pretty open to the public and not in a restricted area.
I mean, has the town considered potentially, in this proposal of looking at acquiring land, keeping it public as well? They looked into land bank, not so much a land bank, but having an opportunity to purchase parcels themselves, towns themselves, to make it guaranteed public space. And then obviously working with whatever committees to then develop what does the town then want to do with that public space as well.
We do normally accomplish that by not asking taxpayers to pay for it, by zoning it so that they have to.
Yeah. Right.
Which, because otherwise we're asking for money basically to buy property.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other key properties, but not usually in that context.
Yeah, at
For open
this
space.
scale, those conversations have not happened. Very large parcels, very expensive parcels, but it is a way other towns have used it to encourage development because they can put out an RFP on publicly owned land to say, this is what we'd like to see, can you help us build it? But I don't think we have that opportunity down here.
The north side is a very different situation than the south, because you've got super large parcels like One General Way, which is basically 75% of that
Right.
northern area there, so, yeah, sorry.
Oh, two issues I wanted to bring in. One is the question of whether any study's been done about whether it's possible to actually find commercial clients by a develop there. Our Commonwealth has a massive amount of commercial property that is empty now, and they're all going to mixed use, meaning really residential. Bunch of housing with some restaurants. And the second related one is one of the major reasons that we don't see redevelopment of the larger commercial lots and industrial lots are the environmental lots. Now, that area on General Way used to be, I'm told, entire recycling. What happens often is as soon as you start digging dirt, you turn up dirt that's a different color. And now there has to be a 3-year environmental study to determine whether that's arsenic and how you're gonna dispose of it. And then you dig a little more and you find a little more. So most communities or most developers find it cheaper to go and plow down woodlots because they don't run the risk of running into contaminants.
Found it in.
So this whole area, though, I think is potentially loaded with issues, whether they're actually harmful contaminants or not,
Right.
because of its historical use. Just having a large parking area, impervious parking area, means when you start digging, you run into motor oils and things. Has that been looked into? The question
So we're not
of how
digging in-
viable it is to make tax revenue out of this redevelopment.
So, right, we know in mixed use, right, we've seen it downtown, right? There's typically, right, in mixed use buildings, smaller amounts of commercial than historically was built back in the 2000s or 90s. Right, that type of square footage isn't, right, you're not getting your 30,000 square foot commercial enterprise anymore. Like General Way exists as now, under 20,000 square feet or so. So in mixed use, you do look at to trend towards smaller commercial square footage or potentially less commercial square footage. But as new commercial development, it has an increase in value. So like we've seen this downtown where a 2,000 square foot gas station was converted to a mixed use building that lost 1,000 square feet of commercial space, but increased in commercial value because it is a new space, it's an effective space, it has personal property, all of these things. So you lost square footage, but for your tax base, you gained commercial value to extract more out of it. On top of the residential value that you gained on top of it that didn't exist there in the first place too. So you double netted that type of value at that specific property. Environmental factors will have to play a role,
Can I just add that this site, the Eastern Gateway site, has been studied by the town now very closely for the last 10-15 years, multiple studies. And it's been identified in many as like the priority development area in your town. It has everything going for it. It has the proximity to the commuter rail station, it has great highway access. It has good visibility from Walker's Brook. And we've had developers come in and meet with the steering committee to say, wow, what a great opportunity this is.
I would agree with most of that, except for the claim of great highway access.
we
The
have,
other thing you have to consider, when you put in a large residential area, now you have to increase your police force, your fire. You have higher buildings, now you need more fire equipment, more infrastructure,
we
more
talked to our
schools.
interdivisions, they are prepared for growth, they're planning for growth, they've seen growth, this is a long-term
It's gonna
plan.
be incremental. It's not gonna be, this plan is not gonna show up next year.
Well, just to be clear, right, first thing I do want to step back, because I forgot to mention, special permit, special approval by the planning board for anybody that doesn't know, so bonuses, waivers, those type of things are all special permit requirements. Second, wetland is not impacted through zoning, right? Wetlands are wetlands, environmental areas are environmental areas, including the buffer zones. Even if those places, this places were to develop, they cannot build in the wetlands, there is still the 25-foot no build zone, there's still the 35-foot zone of natural vegetation, and there's still the 100-foot buffer zone. There is very limited stormwater treatment in and around this entire area that would be improved through redevelopment and through minimum standards. Buildings more efficient. So from the environmental sense, right, this is a developed impervious area, there could be soil findings or other for development. Your zoning does have to try to consider these long-term things as cost drivers and what is appropriate allowances to be flexible enough to work with in the development world without giving away everything, right? That's the point. We want something, but we don't want everything. And so how does our zoning work for that? And that's right, where those by right to special permit allowances that could trigger, right? Your 30 units by right might be incentivizing for redevelopment, but getting to 40 units an acre at a special permit level, now that's more open space we're trying to get out of the project. Now that's more, right, room for the development if they do find dirty soils and those type of things to say, we can still make this work going forward. There's a lot of unknowns, right, in terms of urban planning, but we try to capture everything we can, so.
Yeah, and you get back to that point, my point is, those special permits, those special bonuses really should be excluded from the area within that black box. That's just my feedback, I think that's a no-go zone for any special permits, you know. in our
Well,
opinion.
so what I wanted to say, right, like in this too, right? I'm happy to say like, right, no commercial, right, limited heights, limited setbacks. Whatever the by right density is, right, if that's 10 to 15 units per acre. The special permit would be required to say if they wanted to go to 20 units an acre, but cannot exceed 20 units an acre or something like that. So like, that's where the special permit in the box comes into play to say like, we'll hear you out if you say you need to do 20 units an acre, but what do we get out of it? And what does the neighborhood get out of it? And so that's when the special permit would trigger. But in terms of commercial uses and others, we can completely prohibit them out of that black box.
When you write a special permit process, you have to provide criteria for any project coming in to be evaluated by. So we can write it so that we're really concerned about keeping the scale compatible with the streetscape there and all that.
But you can't prevent special permits to be in play in specific areas.
Sorry, I should say, we can just say, right, 15 units per acre by right, and that's it, and that's it.
Say no commercial.
Yes, so we can say that, or, right, what we try to do, right, again, to, right, creative development, like. Allow that extra room as a special permit if somebody needs it while still having the very same controls of setbacks, lot coverage, those types of things.
Just to go back one more time on that. Other parts in the buffer zones on Bolton and Ash, like closer to Main Street, those could have a set as of right level. This other part of Ash could have a lower as of right, and then you have a special permit to get to that next level, which is still not more than the other ones, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So just to reiterate kind of what I'm hearing tonight, right, in the black box, limited density, maybe even if we sub-district it, we say only 2-family by right, right? It could be a units per acre calculation, but maybe that's.
It's already by right.
Yeah, there's already more than 2 families.
Change.
Not every lot is allowed 2-family by right here. Some of them work, but right, so, okay. Smaller residential density, incremental gentle density up in this black box, no commercial. Did we reach consensus, right, like commercial allowances behind it and or multifamily, is that? Are we still?
Well, I like to see minimum, no exclusion, special permit for like 6-story, exclude that out, 4-story max, 40 feet max. Back there.
Yep.
Multifamily, because it is a residential area.
So you get the train tracks.
And then you get to the train tracks, then
Cuts it off.
you could go, you wanna go Assembly Row, let's go, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But before,
There's still a sight line to be had,
Yeah,
like,
the sightline, yeah, and the reality is special
but it's already,
permits.
I mean, if you're there, it's already a recurring building, it's already commercialized, really.
The reality
Maybe
of
it's like
special
not 6
permits is that a company with enough money comes in and offers the town other things in exchange for the special permits, even if there's
Fixed
existing.
intersection.
The other thing is too, the Keurig building, that's a 6-story building, I mean, that thing's a
Yes.
monstrosity. I've talked to the fire department, I know they don't want that type of stuff there, because they don't have the ladders. But I mean, 6 stories in that area seems like excessive. Where something like, commercial on the first floor with 3 stories above it residential will seem fitting for the town on the northwest, northeast section. Where on the south section is more the residential area, where you keep everything, 4-story residential, I guess.
I do think, right, it's a good point in terms of, right, special permits and, right, where public-private relations come in. Someone said I'd fix your intersection for a 5th story. Is that worth it to the town just to have allowed as a negotiation tool? And so, those are, and I'm saying that's just conceptual, that might not
Was
happen.
it 55? Cause that one, they put in a fire pond in order to get the permission to build that 6th floor.
I added a consideration. The scale of these parcels in and of themselves, if we write zoning that isn't permissive to a certain extent, you won't see any development because of the sheer costs that it requires them to even get these parcels in their ownership. So if we don't make it worth their while, we'll never see development over there, so we're still trying to work out like what is the financial feasibility of some of these scales and densities, but another thing to think about, if we don't allow enough, then we might not see any.
It's usually a tax base, the potential of that to be developed is to get a tax base to pay for the other services in town.
Is right, the growth helps the town budget, yeah,
We need commercial business.
we do.
We're desperate. I mean, it's pathetic. General way, all the vacancies, no one, why doesn't anyone wanna come in there? Cause the traffic flow is awful, right?
And the environmental.
The building's awful.
And I appreciate what you're doing and I wanna see this happen. I would love to be able to walk over there. I would love another train stop. I took the train to Boston for,
Everybody
17
walks
years.
over there by studying through the lake department.
Yeah, I've done that.
There is a difference in terms of the distance between the side of Walker's Brook where Home Depot and Trader Joe's is coming and General Way where Market Basket is. And I put it to you that Trader Joe's has done all of their homework and they know exactly the profile of the customer and they know exactly why they've come to Reading. So they've done the numbers and they know if they figured it out. So in terms of like, there's nothing wrong, if you like, with General Way. But it's kind of underperforming. It's not as, it's there and there are some great businesses we all use there. But it's not dynamic, it's not vibrant, it's not really what we want there. Whereas the other side is a little bit more dynamic. So, but it's very little, there's nothing separating, right?
Right.
So, a little bit of visibility, sure, but really, there's almost nothing in it. So it's and this is the catalyst that the sweet spot that we're trying to hit with your input is how do we catalyze this? Because it'll ultimately, hopefully be in all of our interests in some way, shape or form. And stuff's gonna happen with or without, either way, it'll happen in even smaller slices unless we sort of address it collectively, so.
With buffer zones, right, you're talking about setbacks and things like that, but like, suppose the building, like, say we're talking about that black area and say, okay, here's the buffer zone, but does that mean that like, all right, building can go here, but you can line dumpsters up, closer right on the border? Other things that aren't necessarily the commercial, but things affiliated with commercial.
So in the buffer, right, again, limiting to residential only is what it sounds like, but no, there can still be site plan review processes triggered for those through the planning board, yeah. That 2-family is typically exempt from that, but like considerations of those design types.
Well, I'm talking about development on where they
South
can
section.
develop.
Yeah,
Yes, in the south
so-
section, yes. So like, say, the building has to be set back, but can they put dumpsters right up to the end?
So no, during the design review process, those things would all be evaluated. We are typically looking to request indoor trash systems in new buildings on the first floor because the health department prefers it, neighbors prefer it. In terms of management, they're just more effective than an outside dumpster.
In addition to the zoning, there'll be some design guidelines that will be accompanying this, and so that is hopefully going to deal with all those issues of where loading is, where parking is, you don't want parking in front of the building necessarily, and how parking is accessed, all those things are dealt with in design guidelines.
Screening, landscape, lighting, all things to be considered during the design process and in the guidelines.
on that note, could you just remind me of the acreage? I know when I was at the design meeting a few months ago, we kind of discounted I guess, the subsection at that meeting. We were talking about other things, but what's the total all acreage we're talking about here? And if you subtracted that, was it something like it was like 90 overall? And it was, or 60?
I wanna say it's 60 on the north and like 40 on the south, if I remember correctly. It's on one of the.
Okay, so yeah, that sounds about, so it was 60 on this side of the tracks.
So, yeah,
Okay.
50 down here, yep, and just about 50 on this other side.
Thank you.
So in terms of general way and all that, who owns all that property now? I know that New Crossing Road Development owns all the wild land behind my property right now. But who owns General Way? You're talking about passing regulations for its use, but you also have to deal with the current property owners, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we've talked to the current property owners and outside developers. Right, more allowances are encouraging for a variety of people, including existing property owners. That is one existing property owners that we know is Dennis Properties, great partner for the town. We love working with him, and every chance we get, we bring this topic up of saying, here's where we're at in the process, here's the allowances we're looking for. Whether he decides to do something himself, sell the property, or do nothing for the next 10 years, will be in his court, right? We can only control the zoning. So that's where we're at, but he is aware, and so are other property owners on the corridor.
Like step one is obviously zoning, right? So we have kind of a high level timeframe of when you wanna get the zoning.
So it's ideal at one of the next 2 town meetings, I think based on some changes that I'm thinking tonight through like some sub-districting and other that we're probably trending towards right now, that we might have to like reconsider some early items. So November is gonna be tough, it feels like. I don't wanna say it's completely impossible to reach November town meeting, but it does seem like we're trending potentially to an April town meeting of 2026.
Another one of these meetings prior to.
Yep, so there will be engagement along the way. Both will look to schedule engagement opportunities like this. There will be public hearings at the planning board if and when it gets to that point to discuss the actual final bylaw. That's when you can actually scroll through the text if you so please, and we wordsmith it there. So there will be a lot more opportunity to come.
I don't know if I misheard it. Did you say that they're looking at the traffic study at Lakeview and Water Shore?
So there was a traffic study for the Walker's Brook design done.
Happening with that and
In terms of,
not the lights?
so the signal has been submitted as the preferred design to Mass DOT. What the town is looking for is what's called the Transportation Improvement Program through the state, and that is to receive construction funding from the state for the project, and that does include the signal-based design. We're still not even at the 25% design level on that road. We're talking probably years, and we gotta keep finding grants to fund the design itself before the state gives us construction money, if we get to that point with the state. So that process is ongoing. But we're talking 3, 5, 7 years potentially, so another one that's in the works.
As Andrew told me, not long after I started working, the tip process, it pays to be a community that has their ducks in a row, is ready to come, because it comes in a rotation through communities. And if they say you're up next, Peabody, and Peabody isn't ready to go, they skip them and go to the next town who's ready. So if we're ready, you can accelerate and shave a little time off, which is why we're always looking for grants to say how ready can we be
We
to
are
strike when the iron's
actively
hot.
pursuing
So that's-
grants to keep that design going. We had just submitted another $500,000 grant to hopefully keep that design going past the 25% level to get to a near construction level ready. And then we still have to get through permitting where there's wetlands in the area and things, and so we're getting there, though. We're hopeful for that grant.
What was the DG funding mentioned on one of the slides? He's talking about.
EG funding, design guideline funding. We wrote another grant to support design guidelines. We're hopeful it hasn't come back yes or no either way on that, but to work with the design consultants to do the design guidelines, which is a visual document that says, if you do a 4th story, you have to step it back 5 feet. If you do a 5th story, maybe it's another 5 feet. Here's how we want your parking lot screening and those type of things. So design guidelines, they exist for downtown and they exist for Main Street.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you all. Great questions, great conversation. I think we have a lot of takeaways, some things that we'll be working towards, discuss with the planning board, discuss with the steering committee. Everything we've heard tonight, and there's still a few other open-ended things with them as well. So we will keep you updated along the way. We hope to hear from you again, and please call us anytime because we're available at town hall. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, well.